Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to cut through the noise and bring you insights that, well, hopefully really stick with you. Today, we're heading back, way back,
Yeah.
to the Roman Empire. We look at the aqueducts, the Colosseum, the roads. It's all incredibly impressive, right? Advanced, powerful. But there's this foundational truth kind of woven into the fabric of it all, something much darker. And that's what this deep dive is about. The Roman slave market. We're not just scratching the surface. We're really digging into the economics of it and, maybe more importantly, the human cost. Our guide is a deep dive into Roman slave market, prices, and human cost. And our mission really is to figure out how it worked, what decided a person's value, a chilling concept, and what that tells us about Rome. You know, when you picture Roman life, slave auctions weren't hidden away. They were central. Bustling places, people were bought and sold with contracts, receipts, paperwork, like any other commodity.
Exactly like a commodity.
And it's that paperwork, those records, that give us this really stark, sometimes uncomfortable window into their reality. It feels so long ago. But the ideas, they hit close to home.
And to get the clearest possible picture, we're focusing mostly on the 1st century BC through to the 2nd century AD.
Okay, why that specific period?
Well, a few key reasons, really. First, that's where we have the most records. Inscriptions, legal documents, letters, lots of surviving material about slave sales. Second, this was, without a doubt, the peak of Roman slavery. Think about Caesar's wars in Gaul.
Right, huge numbers of captives.
Exactly. Millions potentially flooding the market. And third, the economy during these centuries was relatively stable compared to later periods.
Before the major inflation and chaos hit.
Precisely. So you put that together, lots of data, peak activity, and a stable economy. It gives historians the best shot at analyzing the pricing dynamics consistently.
Okay, that makes sense. So the big, frankly disturbing question then, how did they do it? How did this advanced society put a price tag on a human life? What was the calculation? Looking at the sources, it's shocking how Roman biases and just, well, practical needs directly became price points. It's a lot to unpack.
It really is. And one of the absolute core factors, as the sources show again and again, was origin, ethnicity.
Where you came from mattered a lot.
Immensely. It tied directly into Roman stereotypes, perceptions about what different groups were good for. Greeks, for example.
Seen as cultured, educated.
Yes. Highly valued for teaching, secretarial work, fancy household roles. They often commanded premium prices because of that perception.
Okay, and others.
Well, contrast that with, say, Gauls or Germans. They were valued primarily for strength, perceived toughness.
So hard labor. Farming, mining.
Farming, mining, gladiators, of course, even bodyguards. Their physical presence was key.
Right.
Then you had people from the East Syrians, Phoenicians, Judeans, often seen as skilled in trade, managing estates, crafts.
So different stereotypes, different price points.
Exactly. And what's fascinating, or maybe grimly fascinating, is how quickly practical needs seem to reinforce these prejudices. It created this system where perceived value based on birthplace became almost codified.
That's stark. But it wasn't just origin, right? Skills, education. That could change things dramatically.
Oh, absolutely. The range in price based on skills was enormous. Really tells you what Rome prioritized.
So, like, what kind of range are we talking?
Well, at the bottom, an unskilled laborer, maybe someone just captured, no specific trade, maybe a few hundred denarii, that's it.
Okay, but if you had a skill.
Then it jumps. Skilled artisans, builders, craftspeople, you're looking at thousands of denarii. The sources mention a shoemaker, vital skill, right? Could cost around 4,000 denarii.
4,000, okay. And then the educated ones.
Big jump again. Doctors, teachers, skilled managers, accountants. 10,000, maybe 20,000 denarii, sometimes even more.
Wow.
And then you get to the absolute top tier, luxury slaves almost.
Like famous actors, chefs?
Exactly. Exceptional performers, famous cooks, people who were status symbols for the super rich. Prices could go into the hundreds of thousands of denarii. It wasn't just skill, it was the prestige they brought.
Hundreds of thousands. It's like a brutal HR system, isn't it? But what does that huge variation really tell us about their values, beyond just profit?
That's a great question. It shows this interesting contradiction. They denied basic human dignity, sure, but they were incredibly pragmatic about intellectual capital, about expertise.
So they recognized the value of skills, even if they didn't value the person.
Precisely. It wasn't just about brute force. A great cook raised your social standing, a good teacher educated your kids, managed affairs, helped you climb the ladder. So the price reflected how much that skill contributed to the owner's wealth, comfort, status. The person was property, but their abilities were a quantifiable asset.
Okay. And then there's age, another critical factor, and honestly a pretty grim one. It created this sort of life cycle of value.
It did. Very much an economic perspective. The sources are quite clear. The prime age, economically speaking, was roughly 15 to 25.
Peak physical condition, trainable.
Exactly. At their peak, adaptable. Very young children, infants, toddlers. Initially cheap, sometimes just given away with their mother.
Really given away.
Sometimes, yes. But their price would start rising around age 10. That's when they became old enough to be properly trained, representing a future return on investment.
Right, potential value.
And
Older slaves.
prices dropped sharply, especially over 40. Physical decline, less productive, unless they had some incredibly rare skill that offset their age.
And this leads to that uncomfortable point about mercy, doesn't it?
It does. It really raises the question of what it means when mercy is an economic calculation. Many older slaves were freed, yes, but often not out of pure kindness.
It was cheaper than keeping them.
Often, yes. Cheaper to free them than to pay for their upkeep once they weren't productive anymore. It's a stark look at that transactional view of human worth.
So even apparent kindness could be rooted in economics. And physical appearance. That wasn't just a minor thing either, was it? Especially for some roles.
Not at all. It was often primary. For heavy labor, sure, it was about strength, health, endurance. So they'd check that carefully at auction.
Milk and prod them, basically.
Pretty much. But for household slaves, beauty, youth, specific physical traits that mattered immensely, skin tone, facial features, grooming, huge impact on price.
And the sources mention wealthy Romans collecting slaves based on looks.
Yes, curating entire households, maybe all blonde Britons or all dark Ethiopians.
Yeah.
It was a display, an exotic, visible sign of immense wealth and taste, just pure commodification based on aesthetics.
Wow. That level of objectification is something else.
And tied into that, tragically, is gender. It played a distinct and often horrifying role in value.
How so? Different demands for men and women.
Generally, yes. Men were more common overall, steady demand for all sorts of labor, farming, crafts, administration. Women, though, were often valued for youth, beauty, virginity, fertility. These could drive prices way up.
And specific female skills, too.
Definitely. Wet nurses, midwives, seamstresses, cosmeticians, specialized skills, higher prices. But connecting this back, the horrifying part is that attractiveness, for women and disturbingly for young boys too, often meant a much higher price because of sexual exploitation.
That wasn't hidden. It was part of the market.
It was an open, accepted, and deeply disturbing part of the Roman slave market. Commodification at its absolute worst.
It really is a lot to process. That cold calculation applied to every aspect of a person. Okay, so we've looked at individual traits, origin, skills, age, looks, gender. But the value wasn't set in a vacuum, right? The wider market, the economy.
Yeah.
That played a huge part, too.
Absolutely. You can't understand the price of an individual without looking at the macro-level forces. They were incredibly powerful.
Like wars.
Wars were massive. Huge influxes of captives meant supply shot up and prices dropped. Caesar's campaigns in Gaul, as we mentioned.
Nearly 1 million new slaves, you said.
An incredible number. It completely changed the market dynamics overnight. It's chilling, really, how big political events directly translated into the mass commodification and suffering of individuals, like a horrifying stock market for human lives.
And the opposite was true, too. Peace meant higher prices.
Yes. When the supply of new captives from wars dried up during periods of peace, prices naturally rose. Demand stayed high, but supply dwindled.
Location mattered, too, I imagine.
Hugely. Rome itself, the capital, center of wealth, highest prices generally, frontier towns, more provincial areas, often cheaper, basic supply and demand geographically.
And even seasonality.
For some roles, yes. Agricultural slaves, for instance. More expensive right before the harvest when labor was critical, cheaper afterwards.
Okay, so these broad forces are swirling around. But the sources give us specific examples, don't they? Like snapshots from the auction block where all these factors collide. Can we look at a few? I think those really bring it home.
Absolutely. They make it less abstract, more real. Imagine, okay, a strong Gaulish man, built for labor, but the auctioneer points out he's missing fingers. Maybe lost in battle, maybe an accident.
So damaged goods, basically.
In their eyes, yes. Despite his strength, that imperfection lowers his price. He's not complete. Or think about an elderly Greek teacher.
Valuable knowledge, but old.
Exactly. His intellect is valuable, but his age counts against him significantly for buyers focused on long-term physical productivity. His overall worth is diminished.
Okay, what about younger slaves?
Let's take a young Numidian boy. His youth offers years of potential work and training. Plus, his exotic North African appearance might be desirable to some wealthy buyers. That combination could push his price up.
And the more skills, the higher the price, as we discussed, like that Syrian girl.
Ah, yes, the Syrian girl trained in multiple things, dancing, cooking, and languages. She's a package deal?
A luxury item.
Precisely. Highly skilled, multi-talented, represents a significant investment in training. She'd be incredibly expensive.
And contrast that with someone like a gladiator.
Right. A gladiator may be famous, but covered in scars. Those scars tell a story, sure, but to a buyer. They signal past injuries, potential weakness, maybe future medical costs. His value is likely reduced.
Even if he was a successful fighter.
Even then, the physical toll mattered. And then, the really grim examples, a runaway. Say a German fugitive who's been caught and branded.
Marked as trouble.
Marked literally. That brand, signifying his status as punished property, a flight risk, it would cause his value to plummet. He's seen as inherently problematic. These aren't just lists of factors, they're how these cold calculations played out on actual human beings at auction.
It's truly sobering to hear those specific cases.
Mm-hmm.
And to really get a handle on the scale, we need some context for the money, the denarii. Converting it to modern currency is tricky, right? Estimates are all over the place.
Extremely tricky. You see figures from maybe $2 a coin to $170. It depends entirely on what you compare it to and when. It's almost meaningless.
So better ways to compare it to Roman costs.
Much more useful. Think about a Roman legionary soldier, backbone of the army. His annual pay was somewhere between, say, 225 and 900 denarii.
Okay, and everyday costs.
Rent for a basic apartment in Rome may be 40 to 100 denarii a year. A small shop owning a small business asset might cost around 1,000 denarii.
Right. And property.
A modest villa could start around 6,000 denarii. A really luxurious estate, 20,000, 50,000, even more.
So putting it all together, a highly skilled slave or a very attractive one.
Could literally cost as much as owning a small shop or even a modest villa.
Wow. That really highlights their economic weight. They weren't just labor, they were significant capital assets.
They absolutely were. And looking at value this way, it really defines the society, doesn't it? It exposes the economics, sure, but also the deep cultural values, the systemic biases, the absolutely brutal commodification of human life that underpinned the Roman world for centuries.
So what do we take away from all this? I mean, beyond the history lesson, the numbers, there's this deeply uncomfortable truth sitting there. Every number, every price, every calculation we've talked about, that was a person, a life denied freedom.
Children taken from parents, skilled professionals forced into servitude, women sold often explicitly for exploitation. Their bodies, their skills, their very existence turned into items on a ledger.
And this wasn't a short phase. It lasted for centuries, adapting, persisting through wars, economic shifts.
It was woven into the empire's structure, pervasive, accepted, and fundamentally dehumanizing.
The core reality just doesn't change, does it? People reduced to property, their value calculated in these cold, hard terms.
It never changed. Their inherent worth, ignored, replaced by a market price reflecting Roman needs, Roman prejudices, Roman power. It's a stark look at what happens when economics completely overrides ethics.
It really is. It's not just ancient history. It feels like a warning about that capacity we have for both amazing things and terrible cruelty. How systems can distort our view of human dignity. So as you think about this deep dive, maybe consider how societies then and now define value, especially human value, and what that definition ultimately costs. Not just the individuals who suffer directly, but the moral foundation of the society itself. It's a heavy thought, but one worth holding on to from history. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. We'll be back with another exploration soon.